who's on board, our attendees, and our lovely panelists. My name's Beth. I'm with the SIP Certified program, and today we're working with Ian of Somm's Kitchen out of Paso, and we have this incredible lineup of wines that are all made sustainably, so they're from SIP Certified properties. And that certification looks at everything from habitat conservation to air quality to water conservation, all the way into how we're taking care of the people who are actually doing the work to make all these great wines and the communities that we're a part of, and having a sustainable business too, so that we can continue doing that for the long term. So today is this really, really cool thing that we've come up with Ian, where we've paired these wines with a number of different foods. And if anyone had a chance to pop on our website, he did a really cool thing of giving us different options of how we could pair the wines up based off of how much time and energy we have. And so today he's going to be going through each of the wines and talking to them, talking about those and the different pairings, showing us some of the different options that he has. And I know Beth, at least, has done an incredible job too, doing all of the pairings too. I'm so excited. So I'd love for you guys to show. Oh yeah, she's giving credit.
You really take credit. We did it.
Yeah, the royal we. So I'd love for you to show all the foods that you've made as well. And then for any of our attendees too, again, I'm going to keep my eye on that chat box. So if you have questions or things that you want to ask or add of Ian, please pop that in there. And with that, welcome Alex, Jamie, Michelle, Beth, Ian. And I think our first wine we're going to do is from Cambria Winery, which is one of the Jackson Family Wines properties. They've been farming this sustainably for over 30 years. It's in Santa Maria. And this wine that you guys have today actually just received 92 points by the Wine Spectator. So what a treat.
Cool.
Give it off to you.
Okay, so welcome to everybody, and thank you so much for having me. For the panelists, has anybody been to the restaurant yet? So I know. Okay. Yeah, okay, good. Jamie's been there. Cool. All right, so how it works usually is the whole concept is you come in the restaurant and there's 14 seats, and we start at 6 o'clock. Everybody arrives at the same time, and I usually prepare between 10 and 12 courses, and we go through at least 14 wines a night. And I love doing it that way because I always think it's so scary to have one glass of wine in front of you and really examine it. To go through 14 different styles, I think by the end of the night, you can say, hey, that has acid, that has tannins, this is fruit forward, this is more restrained, so on and so forth. So I'm thrilled with today's lineup because I think you'll really see some of the differences as we go side by side with them. And then, of course, the whole night at the restaurant is sort of the idea of pairing and why we pair certain foods with certain wines. And I'll go into that with each wine then as well. Do you guys need my background at all, Jamie or anybody? Yeah? Okay. So how we get there is that, so I'm a wine guy first and then a food guy. So you come to the restaurant, just go over my background a little bit. Grew up on the East Coast, 13 to 17. Every summer I went to a different 3-star Michelin in Europe to learn to cook. Went back to New York, finished school there, and then so on and so forth. In these days, when we're not locked down the way we are, I work directly for the state departments. So the White House, Vatican City, Imperial Palace, they send me all over the world just coaching about wines. And then when they do state dinners and so on and so forth, they have a right California wine to go with their meals. So the whole life is teaching wine. When you come to the restaurant, I really believe wine's better with food and sort of good company. And that's the idea here. So as we go through, ask as many questions as you want, because this is the first time I'm actually doing a webinar. So I'm kind of nervous / unprepared, but welcome. So yeah, the first one is the Cambria Chardonnay, and you might have seen in the prism the different things I chose to pair with this. I did a little blend of some of the more serious dishes and then some of the more fun dishes. I think the seminar today is just more about what you can get from around the house and putting some fun twists on it. So I made pretty simple ants on a log, right? So the reason I did that though, and I put a little twist on it to sort of make it nerdy wine-wise, is that, with Chardonnay, especially Burgundies and then sort of higher end Chardonnays like this one, they always talk about oak. And for French oak, there's always some sort of spice in it. You can tell it's French oak because maybe you smell vanilla or cinnamon or cloves or nutmeg, some kind of winter spice. So I thought it's kind of fun with your peanut butter to take your favorite winter spice that's in the cupboard, cinnamon, nutmeg, vanilla, and just blend it into the peanut butter. It's kind of fun. And then rather than the raisins, I put chocolates because kids love chocolate. So that was the idea. And why I did it with the Chardonnay is that if you taste, first of all, taste the Chardonnay, I guess. We're tasting, right? Yeah, good. Okay, so right. I think when we go into the wines, I start talking about them at the restaurant. I always sort of say that it's really scary. It's intimidating sometimes to have one glass of wine and really go over the aromas of the wine. I think sometimes when we're in a tasting room or with a sommelier and I start mumbling on about cherry notes, blackberry notes, term soil, hockey pucks, footballs, whatever I come up with, there's a disconnect between the aromas and me talking about them and you having one glass in front of you. But I think structure of the wine is why people sort of like a wine or may not like a wine. And with structure, I usually talk about the acid, tannins, and alcohol level. So when you taste that Chardonnay, and even as you might have swallowed it now, you still should get some tingling on your tongue, right? That's acid, right? And it's much more objective. So rather than me saying, wow, these pineapple notes are great, the acid is really there. And you kind of like that or you may not like that, right? So with peanut butter, chocolate, and celery, what's happening is that this tingle on your tongue sort of dissipates if you have something rich and fatty like the peanut butter, and then it keeps the peanut butter bright. So the idea is if you have this Chardonnay, even if there's a scoop of peanut butter around your house later, get the peanut butter and see what happens because it sort of really softens the dryness in your mouth right now. So if someone asks for a rich, buttery white wine, I gave them that, they may be upset with me. This wine is so cool because it's just so bright and so fresh, but there's definitely that tingle on your tongue. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to have the peanut butter with it as well. The celery, bone dry, obviously, sort of a vegetable. We know this. So the vegetable notes with the Chardonnay sort of makes it more complex. And that's sort of what I had for the Chardonnay. Are there any questions on this at all so far or thoughts? Nothing? Beth, what are you eating?
I'm managing the chat box. I wasn't sure if I could multitask that well.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, I meant, I guess Beth too.
Yeah,
Beth too is eating something.
There you go, Beth. Now you're on.
Uh-oh, Beth, we have a problem with our name.
I know.
I can go by Elizabeth.
Yeah, either way.
Elizabeth.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, especially if I'm in trouble. So, yeah, we're doing the waffle. We're doing the waffle right now.
The waffle's cool because again, it's sort of this carb-heavy, rich, fatty dish that, especially when you burn where you caramelize the outside of the waffle, that sort of caramelization goes really good with the acid on the wine. So my whole life is pairing the structure of the wines with the structure of the food. To me, that kind of works. Again, I'll get back to it, and then we'll go back into the wines. Is that when people go to the restaurants, it's kind of rare they ever come in and say, hey, tonight I want a wine that smells like blackberries, or I hate this wine because I get pineapple aromas on it. You got to be kind of confident to do that, and not a lot of people talk that way. Most people say, hey, I want a dry white wine. It's 100 degrees out. I want something big and bold, something fruit forward from Paso. You're really talking about the structure of the wines, and that's sort of what I really believe in and why it pairs with certain foods as well. So, does that make any sense? Good? Yes?
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right. So
the yogurt goes really well with it too. We kind of did both of your suggestions.
which one? I'm sorry, the waffles and the.
We did. Can you guys see?
We can see.
We got the waffles and just strawberry yogurt, which we always have on hand. So that goes really well with it. I mean, even better than the waffle.
Cool. As you drink through your 8 wines, everything's going to taste and pair so well.
Yeah.
Does that work?
All right.
Yeah, that's good.
Might show the photos.
Right.
So the next wine we'll do is the Tally Chardonnay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Tally's a really cool property down in Arroyo Grande. They've been family owned since 1948. They grow over 50 fruits and vegetables. A lot of you might be familiar with their CSA box, which is just amazing if you ever want some fresh produce. They started growing grapes in 1986. And I think one of the coolest things about them is how they give back to their community. They have a wine that's called Mano Tinta that some of you might have seen out there. And it's a charity wine, and they collaborate with a lot of other growers and winemakers on the Central Coast. And the proceeds go to support the Fund for Vineyard Farm Workers. And I was talking to Brian Talley about this event today, and he said one of his favorite things to pair with this Chardonnay is actually their avocados.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, most of us have had Tally. I love Tally. I hate to use the word Burgundian, but I'll explain that in a second. But this is why I sort of pair it with I made the chicken noodle soup today, which is just my nerdy version of it. So it's just chicken noodle soup. But what I do is at the restaurant, you know, it's a lot of slow cooking. So we sous vide the chicken for about 3 days to get it moist, and then we sous vide the carrots. We cook them in the truffle oil, and then made the broth, and so on and so forth. But one day you'll come try it, hopefully. But if you're ever out and about, or if you're ever at a wine store and you have the opportunity to taste a Chablis, right? There's Chablis, there's white Burgundy, and then of course now we're talking about Central Coast Chardonnay. To me, the dead giveaway is this sort of brothy characteristic with Chablis, and then with sort of Central Coast Chardonnay, especially Tally. That's sort of why I say Burgundian. When you taste this, just sort of think brothy, and I think you'll get it. Okay, and if you had 10 Chardonnays lined up next to each other, and one was a true white Burgundy from, you know, Pouligny-Monchais, you may get some marzipan and almond. But Chablis, and then especially Tally, always has this sort of brothy texture to it, and then this sort of mineral finish. And again, the acid. You can go back to wine 1, the Cambria, and I think you'd see how much more apparent the really cool climate of Cambria has that makes it tingle on your tongue. Where Tally has a sort of creamy texture to it, but it also keeps it bright with the acid. So if Tally didn't maintain the structure, the wine would be sort of flabby. But because this is round and fruit forward and sort of creamy, it's still, the acid sort of keeps it alive and fresh. But I paired it with the chicken soup mostly because of the brothy notes I get on the Tally. So, make any sense, or questions at all? Thoughts? No. Do you see how Cambria wine 1 sort of tingles more? It's a more austere version, where Tally's more soft. So anyway, question: are they able to ask questions, or no? Do I just keep going?
They are. I'm watching the chat box, and there's a questions section.
Okay.
Or you guys can always give me a little like me, and I'll unmute you, and it's helping with the feedback to keep it muted that way.
Cool.
Yeah. So let's see, Jamie. There you go, Jamie. Are you able to talk now? Let me double check this. Miss Jamie Lewis. There you are, Jamie.
Yeah. Hi.
There you go. Yeah. Hello.
Yeah. Hi. Both of these were much brighter than I expected they would be. I guess the Cambria maybe not as surprising, but the Tally is not, it's not big, it's not round. I mean, it is softer for sure, but I'm really pleasantly surprised with this one. I haven't had a Tally Chardonnay in a while because they do tend to be, the ones like Rosemary's Vineyard, they tend to be pretty big.
Sure.
At least that's what I remember.
Yeah, no, I personally think Tally across the board, their Pinots and their Chardonnays, if you had them on a lineup of internationals and California's blended into the lineup, I can usually pick out Tally because they're really good at embracing the fact that, hey, we're in California, we don't mind getting our Pinots and our Chardonnays ripe, and it shows fruit that, you know, cooler European sites can't. So we can get the phenolic characteristics from the wine, but they also preserve the old world structure. So it's a bridge, a little bit of California fruit, and they preserve the old world structure. So there's acid in the wines as well, which I can go into in a little while. But does that make sense at all, or for me?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm really pleased with both of them. And I'm also just glad that they survived shipping.
Yeah. This is the time to ship. It's a cool climate.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Cool. All right. we can talk about the sparkling next.
Right. So our sparkling, that's from Riverbench Vineyard and Winery. So they were established in 1973. They focus on Chardonnay and Pinot down there, of course, nice cool climate. And those grapes were all planted on the bank of the Sisquoc River. In 2006, they started their own wine program. And since 2008, they've really focused on establishing their premium sparkling wine program. And I don't know if any of you guys have been down there before, but man, do they have a fabulous lineup of sparkling wines if you're ever in the mood to taste something delicious. I'll let you take it from there.
A couple things. You know, sparkling wine, when I first started this, I was sort of saying aromas are kind of challenging. They're intimidating, somewhat subjective, and structure plays a big part in all these wines. And, you know, especially with sparkling wines, I think it's really hard to start getting fruit aromas from it. You usually talk about the secondary aromas are definitely the structure of the wine, right? And what sort of dictates that wine, again, it's acid in this case, but it's how long they leave it on the lees for too. So go ahead and smell it, I suppose. And it's a pretty clean example. If you had a wine list in front of you and you went to the champagne section or sparkling section and you saw, you know, a bunch of NVs, non-vintages, then you saw some with vintages next to it and so on and so forth, what is that telling you? Usually in champagne's case, and I'll talk about Riverbench in a second here too, it's just the style is pretty much how much sugar is added to the wine. And then most importantly, when you see them pictures on the internet or if you get to go visit the sites, how they turn the bottles, are riddling it. They're basically taking the yeast from the bottom of the bottle to the top, and over time they're slowly turning it and it's lifting up and it's taking the yeast from the bottom to the top, and along the way it's sort of imparting these really cool flavors. You know, each house, each producer has a different method on doing it, but the yeast and the length it takes, the time it takes to get from the bottom to the top sort of dictates how it's going to taste. It usually imparts some kind of brioche or toasty aroma to the wine, and in this case you can sort of smell it, and it's a super clean example, but you do get some yeasty notes. If I said, hey, is this fruit driven or does this smell more like a sourdough starter or some sort of yeast, I think you may tend to start thinking that it's a more yeasty wine, right? But if you taste it, there's a couple things that happen, right? So when you first taste it, we go back to acid again. This one actually pierces your tongue, right? If you go back to wine one, the Cambria, it's really bright wine. It's a fresh wine. There's acid tingling on it, but this sparkling wine pierces your tongue, right? It's super intense acid. But then after that, you taste it again, the acid comes, and then this is really cool mousse that develops. And I think Riverbench does an excellent job with that. If you have 10 wines in front of you, 5 are true champagnes and 5 are California sparkling, how I would tell the difference usually is, again, how hard or how intense that piercing is initially, and then how it just sort of lights up and makes this mousse in your mouth. So I would say for everybody is to try it real quick and see how it pierces and the mousse. Okay, so with that, the mousse and the acid, I made these. You guys know what a cannelle is? So if you guys Google, who don't know, afterwards, cannelle, C-A-N-E-L-L-E. This is in Borel. There's a little sub-appellation of Saint-Emilion. They're famous for making these little cakes here. So I make them at the restaurant. This is served at wood end the night, and you make them upside down. This is copper mold, and they're pretty much sugar-free in the sense that I use a beeswax on the outside of it, and I fill them with rum for the batter. So they're pretty cool. The caramelized sugar or the caramelized beeswax on the outside, again, is really cool with the acid from the champagne as well. So. Any questions or thoughts or? Yes.
I love that. I was going to unmute Alex here. I think he might be self-muted, but I like his comment that he put on the board. It says it's required exquisite discipline to wait to open the bottles.
That's right.
I appreciate that. Anybody else?
Were you gonna say something? No? Yeah.
Say, can you order those to go? Can you just like pick up those?
So what I've done for the
From
restaurant.
Italian to Italian.
Yeah, I like this. I know I liked them already. So well, I guess we'll sidetrack for 2 seconds. The restaurant, what I've done is I team up with a winery I do 3 to 4 takeout services a week. I team up with a local winery. The idea is that I'll make a 5-course or 6-course meal to pair with a particular wine from a local winery to help move Paso wine right now. And then all the tips that I get go directly to the tasting room staff, because those guys are kind of out of luck right now, right? So any cash or anything that they give online for tips goes through the tasting room. It was kind of fun. You get to go home, and then on the way home, driving, I make these audio notes about the wine and the dinner itself to sort of help the experience out a little bit. Blah 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 blah. But yeah, so
So we
keeps
had
me
to,
in the kitchen cooking and gets people out of the house, and it moves Paso wine, which is good.
That's really good.
so I had to refour because I made an actual Bellini with like pureed raspberries
Yeah.
and honey, and then I put it in there. But I think it's it's nicer.
You guys are gonna pass out before we get to the reds.
I know, that's why I had to have this. I'm a total.
That's why we made a lot of food.
Cool.
You guys did good on that. And I see Jamie, let's get you off over here. Jamie said that she's really liking the sparkling wine too. Do you have anything else to add?
Me?
No, for Jamie, you might have to unmute yourself on this one. Looks like you're muted. There it is.
I liked that you gave us the option for those of us who have children, what we could make. I couldn't even meet that bar.
Mhm.
So I have Cheetos.
Yeah.
That's what I have. And just to say, I actually really love fatty, crunchy things with sparkling, and this one is so complex. It's actually delightful with those. So thanks.
Cool. Great.
Cute. I love it. Anyone else, or are we moving on to the next one?
Should open the next one.
All right, let's do the next one. So that should be the Wrath wines, I believe, right?
Yeah, we'll do the Wrath Pinot Noir. So if you want to talk about Wrath for a second, then I'll talk about the pairing.
Yeah. So Wrath is owned by Michael Thomas, and he's actually an archaeologist, and he just has this passion for ancient Italy. And through that, he also developed this love of wine and love of food. And so he established the San Saba Vineyard, which is up in the Santa Lucia Highlands in 2007. They do Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Syrah, Sauv Blanc, and really produce some cool wines out of that area. And on our website, sipcertified.org, we have a super fun profile on Michael. It's a cool picture of him at one of his dig sites in Italy.
Cool. All right. So getting back to the pairings a little bit, and then sort of the wines, right? We have so many different wines here from different producers, and how the heck do you ever compare them quality-wise? We won't necessarily do that, but I'll sort of go into how my method of thinking is that way, and then sort of why I use it for the pairing. So if you have an apple and an orange, how do you compare them? Or a Chardonnay to a Pinot, or a Barolo to a Bordeaux? How do you compare them fairly if you have, a bad Pinot Noir next to a Chardonnay and you love Chardonnay, right? So I came up with a fair way to do it. It's called Blick. So balance, length, intensity, and complexity, right? So even if you just don't like Pinot Noir, or just don't like Cabernet, or a particular grape you don't really like, how can you sort of examine it with being fair? So balance, does the wine sort of seamless? Does it just go straight through? In other words, I think we had a wine sometimes where it's super tart, really high acid, no fruit going on. Or the opposite, there's all the fruit in the world, but then there's just no structure and kind of flabby. So how balanced is the wine? The length, what you're tasting, is it lasting less than 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15, 20 seconds? Intensity, if you tilt the glass forward and I start naming aromas, are they believable? Are things popping from the glass? You're really sort of searching for what I'm talking about. And then I think Jamie just mentioned the complexity of the river bench. Are there only 2 things going on with the wine? Are there 5 things going on in the wine? 10 things, so on and so forth. So when I'm doing these pairings, not every wine can have everything all the time, right? So I'm always trying to fill in the gaps a little bit. If there's acid on the wine, let's get something fatty, so on and so forth. So the Wrath wines, really is the soil and a little bit more earthy, restrained style. It's kind of lighter in color. Again, it has good acid. There's some stem inclusion on this. But if you taste it, because of the climate where it's from, it's kind of a lean texture and kind of a soft wine, right? And I really like sipping on it. It's kind of cool. But if you do something kind of stewed that's sweet, it really picks up the dish a little bit, right? And the acid and the stem inclusion, you can almost feel the texture of the stem inclusion after you taste this wine. I made these little cherries here. How I do them is, you guys see, there's a bowl of them, but I serve them. It's one of the first things I did at the restaurant, and I've used them in different ways. But these take 4 to 5 days to make. I cook them for 8 hours on the heat and then 8 hours off the heat, but there's no sugar. I take it on the concept that there's grapes in the vineyard, and we've all had a sweet wine before, like a Sauterne, has about 170 grams of sugar per liter. But you don't add flour to a wine, you don't add sugar to a wine or dairy or milk. So all the food I do is sort of natural. So these cherries here are cooked for 4 to 5 days on and off the heat, back and forth. And by taking it off the heat, it sort of preserves the integrity of the skin. So when you taste them, they pop open, and there's this really cool cherry juice inside of them then too. So because it's stewed down, it's super concentrated, it's really, really fruit forward. It wouldn't be good with another big fruit forward wine. It needs something that's a little bit more lean in structure. And this one's stem inclusion sort of helps how sweet the cherries are as well. So it's almost the opposite of the first two pairings. So make any sense? Or it's so hard because I wish you can taste these cherries because they're good. So questions, comments? Keep going.
See, do any of our panelists have any questions? I actually have a question from our audience about the sparkling that we just went through, and it was other savory dishes to go with that, although she liked the idea of the Cheeto.
Cheetos are good, yeah. Anything that's sort of 4th of July, we have these parties now and then. Everybody brings their recipe of fried chicken, because fried chicken and champagne is such a classic pairing. French fries are awesome, so get your bottle of favorite sparkling and go through whatever, in and out, whatever fries you like, because French fries and champagne are awesome together.
I love that. And Jamie chimed in. If you want to add to your thoughts, you can unmute yourself too. She's saying she's had your cherries before and is a fan,
Cool.
or maybe that style of cherry.
Cool.
Yeah, and I don't generally do sugar. And I remember asking you at the restaurant, is this something I can have? And you said, yeah, all natural. It's just put down over the course of several days.
I don't advertise it at the restaurant because sounds so terrible, but yeah, we know. I've never used butter at the restaurant. I don't use dairy, no sugar. Everything's just natural and cooked down. Everything's based on the idea of wine fermenting. So we just slow cook everything, and that's sort of how we do it. So yeah. So at the end of the night, usually you end with like 5 to 7 desserts, but none of them have sugar added to it, outside sugar. So anyway, cool.
Very cool.
Questions on the Pinot at all? Or yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I'll get you guys on Beth. Yeah, no sound. There you go. I wonder if you've self-muted. I'm clicking your mute button. There it goes.
Oh, there we go.
Now you're live.
Yeah. Is there a spot to like raise my hand if we want to like talk like Zoom, or is it?
Yeah, there's a question box or a chat box, and I'm watching both of those. And so if I see those, I'm trying to get my click on so I can unmute you guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't. We're like away from the.
I know. You can just give me a name. That works too. This works. We should have gotten everyone flags.
So I was just intrigued about like the no sugar adding, no butter. I mean, that's like unheard of almost sometimes in.
I can't believe I'm telling you this on this format, because I don't like saying that until the end of dinner every night, because otherwise the food sounds terrible. But maybe Jamie can talk about it because she's been there. But yeah, it's all.
Well, I think it's intriguing because there's a lot of fat in butter, right? And you got just different flavors for sure. Salts, if you're not using unsalted butter and stuff, and you get too salty, or. But I like it, and we did the pizza with it. And
pizza's cool. English muffin pizza.
Yeah.
My favorite meal in 2nd grade.
Totally. We were talking about that before, Ian, and that's how I grew up. My mom used to make English muffin pizzas before going off to work for her night shift nursing.
Good mom.
I love that you suggested that one for the Pinot.
You know, when Beth sent this challenge out a month ago now, I just sort of sat down and just shot from the hip the dishes I had growing up and the ones I liked. So yeah.
Wow, I thought it was the only one.
Raph?
All right, so I guess we'll do the Lucia next if you want to talk about the brand a little bit, and I'll talk about the pairing.
Yes, sure. So the Lucia is from the Pizzoni family vineyard. They're out in the Salinas Valley. They've also been farmers for generations. Since 1952 is when they first started out there. They're growing Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Syrah, and the Santa Lucia Highlands. They've about 40 acres that are planted. And just this year, they won the California Green Medal Business Award, which is a really, really cool honor for them to have received, and they've definitely earned it. It's worth going to their website and reading some of their blog posts about all of the cool work that they're doing out there.
Cool. All right, so this wine, awesome wine, but completely opposite from the Wrath. Much darker in color, much more fruit forward, just a dramatically different style. So I put down whatever your favorite jerky is the one I made, but you may want to show off your BLT to everybody real quick because that was pretty impressive. BLT is great at this as well. So jerky obviously is kind of dry, but now you sort of understand where I'm coming at. Hopefully when you taste this wine, how much rounder it is, how much more fruit forward it is, darker extracted. The acid levels now are a lot lower than the first few, at least is what you can censor when you're tasting it. So it's a softer, more extracted California Pinot Noir. And I think it goes really cool with the jerky because it makes it super moist. But then the smoky flavor. So if you had a lean Pinot Noir like the Wrath, with a little bit more earthy secondary aromas on it, you know, the earthy aromas, the smoked meats and so on from the jerky are sort of too much of the same with the Wrath. So this is the opposites. This is an opposites attract. If you had like a really cool climate, Syrah sometimes, or Pinot Noir from Burgundy, they're super, super smoky, turn soil, mushroom notes, kind of earthy. Jerky is that, right? So now we have the jerky, which is what I just mentioned, but now we pair it with something more fruit forward. It's an opposites attract pairing. So I think they both help each other out. So, because it's about getting back to the BLIC, balance, length, intensity, complexity. It's how can you make things more complex? So this wine already has the fruit aromas on it, right? So now you add the sort of smokiness and the spiciness of the jerky, and you're adding something to it. So rather than just doing more, you know, if I did the cherries with this wine, it's just sweet and sweet, or sweet and fruit forward, it doesn't work as well. So that was my theory behind it. So I don't serve jerky in the restaurant though. So questions, thoughts? Yes.
So we're going to another Pinot after this, right?
Yes.
So what's the thinking on the order there?
I won't claim that I thought about it. I just went. It's the thing with this is that there's 3 Pinots and they're pretty much from similar types of climates, but they actually taste so different. And I think these sessions are super valuable if you can have 3 Pinots like that in front of you, rather than me just saying, hey, this one's more fruit forward and soft. I think you can really see how it applied after having something that was a little bit more stemmy, high acid, and restrained. And now that we'll try the third one and we'll see what happens there. But
Sorry, I actually just realized I was sent to Syrah. So I was like, what is happening? It's so dark. So that's why I didn't mean to ask to question your reasoning on Pinots. I have a Syrah here.
You have a Syrah too?
This is the Sobranis Vineyard Syrah.
Okay, so good lesson with the Syrah because you guys all have it there. This is perfect. It's a lesson on tannins, right? And I think Syrah is perfect for it. So we've all had a Cabernet before, where even a younger Cabernet, where you taste the wine and you can't talk anymore because your mouth is so dry, right? And living on the Central Coast, we're always dealing with Syrah, Grenache, and Mourvèdre. And what are some of the ways to tell the differences and why is that Syrah in your glass then, right? So what should be happening is that if you taste it, it's firm, it attacks your gums and teeth like a big Cabernet would, but then they fade away. So I call them chalky tannins. So taste it, and I bet you anything, the sensation on the roof of your gums will stick, and they fade away slowly. Where Cabernet tannins are sticky, they just keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. So. You see, for the first time in all these wines, that should keep your mouth kind of dry right now. The other ones were tingling your tongue. You know, the 2 Chardonnays tingled, the Champagne pierced. There's definitely acid on the Wraith, but this one should sort of have a dry sensation on the roof of your mouth, and that's a lesson on tannins. And again, if you come to the restaurant and you ask me for a fruit-forward, soft red wine, you may be disappointed, right? Because you feel this, it's definitely dry. In Cabernet, especially younger Cabernets, the sensation you feel now is usually 2 or 3-fold. It's just super intense tannin-wise. So anyway, that makes sense for the tannins, or you guys feel that?
Yeah.
Because that
definitely
becomes
on
more
top of them.
objective rather than me saying, hey,
Yeah.
there's blackberry notes on the Syrah, right? So cool. Questions, thoughts?
Love this wine.
Cool.
Love this wine. It goes so well with the BLT. It's kind of crazy.
The trick there is what doesn't go good with the BLT.
It goes well with the BLT. I promise. I would share with you.
We could do like virtual drop-offs.
Scratch and sniff ALT.
So next week with the to-goes I'm doing, rather than just doing one wine, I'm doing these little 3-ounce vials. So you can have a flight of wine at home with your to-go meal. It'd be kind of fun. So cool. All right. So
Next on deck, we're doing the Presqu'île. All right, we're doing a Presqu'île. This is out of Santa Maria Valley. It's a Pinot Noir. Again, cool climate, so they're focusing on growing Pinot, Chard, and Sauv Blanc. They have 73 acres there, and if you haven't been, it is absolutely worth going to. For 2018 and 2019, they won USA Today's 10 best tasting rooms in the country for very good reason. It's up on this hill, and there's incredible views over the vineyards and the oceans, and they do fabulous concerts out there. So definitely a place worth stopping by.
cool. So with this one, Pinot and salmon are awesome together. I know a couple of them made the tuna sandwich, so I put a little twist on it. I tried to do something you can probably attempt to do at home. If you guys have it, does anybody have a Traeger grill? Traeger smoker? Okay. Traegers are neat, and there's a little trick with Traegers, which what I do is I take the sandwich, I'll show you in a second, but I start smoking it. For 10% of the way in, I take all the wood off the smoker, and then it's smoked directly with dill and fennel, right? Dill and fennel and Pinot are awesome to me, and salmon is perfect. I love Oro King salmon because when you look at it in the marketplace, each vein has this really cool white marbling through it, so it keeps the fish moist the whole way through. So I'll show it to you real quick. It's not how I played it at the restaurant, but just sort of salmon, but you see all the dill and fennel on top? So that's the pollen from it, and then the actual fennel bulbs and stuff are smoked in the smoker, and that's what's smoked in the meat. And then also, you can do that with meats too if you guys ever go to the market and get adventurous here in the next month. Get a duck breast, and rather than smoking it with wood, get cloves, cinnamon, nutmeg, vanilla, and sort of smoke it with those winter spices, and it smells like Christmas when you're cooking it. It's really good with Pinot Noir as well too. So Pinot Noir, again, sort of a lighter color here. It's leaner. It's not quite as, you can go back to the Wraith. I think it's not quite as stemmy as the Wraith though. So it's a softer, cleaner, very well balanced. We talk about Blick. This wine is super well balanced, just seamless, super bright. Cool.
Awesome. We have Adam Montiel on here with us too. It sounds like the video quality isn't working as great for him, but he did say that he paired his Chardonnay with roasted chicken and veggies, and he said it was the bomb. So that's a nice pairing option too for the Chardonnay.
Neat. Tell him I said hi.
Well, I think he can hear us still.
Cool, cool.
Hi, Adam. Anyone else? Here we go. Miss Elizabeth.
Could you repeat the acronym LIC so Beth can write that down? And
Oh yeah, so it's BLIC, right? When I'm thinking about a pairing or the quality of a wine, balance, right? Acid,
Balance.
alcohol, tannins, fruit. Are they all in balance, right? Is there way too much acid in this wine? Is there not enough acid? So on and so forth. How well balanced this wine is, right? So this one right here, it's a great example. It's seamless, goes straight through. Length,
Okay.
how long are the aromas that you're getting lasting? Intensity, if you tilt this glass forward, are things popping from the glass, right? It's probably a good example if you guys have the Syrah there. The Syrah versus Pinot you just had, I bet you if you tilt the glass forward, the Syrah is popping from the glass, right? Okay. And then complexity. Ultimately, with pairings, that's what I'm trying to do. Add 4 or 5 things to the glass of wine, or have the glass of wine add 4 or 5 things to the dish, right? I always want some sort of fruit aroma with the pairing, whether it's coming from the wine or the food. I always want some good structure. A fatty dish doesn't, needs to go with an acid wine or vice versa. Sort of a rounder wine. Then you want something a little more tart and austere for the food. So on and so forth. So I'm always trying to get balance, length, intensity, and complexity. It's kind of hard to do here, but if you ever come to the restaurant, I think it starts to really make some sense as you go through a bunch of wines and a bunch of different types of foods right next to each other, and you start to sort of see, wow, that really does work, hopefully.
So, makes sense. Thank you.
All right. Real quick, Alex, what's going on with the to-go things down in Santa Barbara?
It's pretty active. I mean, there's a lot of restaurants that are doing it.
Just curious.
Yeah, you're the first 3-ounce flight that I've heard of.
Yeah.
And I'm curious with that. So are you doing pairings with the flights, to go pairings with the flights?
So I've been doing this now for 3 weeks. I've never done to go in my life, and it's fine. It's actually kind of fun in a way. It's a good challenge. Keeps me cooking. But really, at first, my goal was just to get the tips for the tasting room people, keep me in the kitchen, and then also sell some local wine. So I don't know if I've exhausted that yet, but I think I need to keep things changing for locals, because another part of this equation is that Paso Robles is such a destination for wine and food that I send out to my mailing list, and 90% of them are not in the area to get to go. So what do you do? So I have to keep the locals happy, and they're definitely supporting us. They're doing an awesome job, but I also want to do things fun for them. So this week I'm doing the first sort of blind tasting to go. They pick up 6 local wines, and I'll do sort of something like this on Monday, where people sort of listen to me talk about the differences between the wines. But then next week, what I'm going to start doing is just different themes. Central Coast versus the world. So they'll get 3 Rhone varieties from Paso and 3 Rhone varieties from Europe, probably, and you can sort of walk through it that way. I'm not necessarily saying to pair each course with it, because that's just too hard for them to bring home and try to execute. So yeah, It's more about just comparative sets, and that way it's kind of fun too, because people who just can't taste super high-end wines all the time, not everybody's going to go out and buy a $150 bottle of wine. But if you spread the wealth and give 3 ounces to everybody with a more inexpensive wine, then you sort of get to sort of see that for not as much money going out of your pocket, and you get to see, hey, that really was worth $100 compared to the $50 Syrah or whatever it is, and that's sort of the idea. I mean, I can talk all day about wine, we can read about it all day, but to me, the biggest value in wine is having them side by side, really seeing the differences in front of yourself. So that's how my restaurant came about, because it's scary to open up a wine list when you first sit down in a restaurant, and all you usually see are prices. And am I going to put that much money towards a bottle I haven't had before, and now this is what I'm having for the rest of the night? So I really like the idea of people tasting different types of wines throughout the night. So now we'll try to do that to go. We'll see how it works. So, yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah.
I have a question from Adam for you, Ian.
Yeah.
So he's asking, why is there always more clonal talk when we talk about Pinot rather than other grapes? Because we usually hear about like it's Pinot 667 or 777, but we don't talk about that as much with other varieties. Do you know why that's the case?
I would just say that like Burgundy, the Mecca of Pinot Noir is probably the most studied wine region on earth, and nerds and everybody's been studying it forever. And I think that there's so many different types of clones, and think they really dictate the type of wine. It could be a commercialization answer, but you know, the clones in every wine are important. The Chardonnay clones, Cabernet clones, they all do different things. Why we talk about it, I don't know. I don't know.
Interesting.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I noticed it's always in the back of Pinot bottles more than other bottles, the clones they use. So yeah, it's I just think it's one of those grapes that are sort of nerdy to begin with. I think if you talk to someone outside of California who doesn't really know about wine, and you mention red wine, they're most likely to go to Cabernet Sauvignon. I think then the Central Coast, we know the everyday person knows so much about wine, you know, Viognier, Roussanne, Marsanne. But then we start getting to Santa Barbara and San Lucia and Monterey, there's so much Pinot Noir grown there. And how do you sort of distinguish from the next guy? Is maybe clonal selection is one of the ways you do it. And that's why it's being talked about.
That makes sense.
There's a
And
marketing answer. There's probably an objective answer too. So
always. And then Michelle had a question too. I just unmuted her, but she was asking how many to-go meals are you going to be doing on Monday, and which winery are you going to pair with?
yeah, so the thing about my restaurant is that it's just me. I have me and my 2 dishwashers. So I do all the cooking, I do all the serving, I do all the talking. So it's just me. So I had to keep that model because my restaurant's only built to do so many people. And I only ever do 14 people a night. It's one seating, 14 people, and then that's it. So I sort of kept the same theme. So I'm only doing 12 dinners a night, right? So hopefully I move a case of wine a night. It's great. So this Friday, I'm doing Top Winery. And then Saturday, I'm doing V Creek. And then Sunday, I'm doing Adelaida. And next week, I'm doing Law. And a couple of them are to be determined. So there's nothing going on Monday. Sorry. So yeah, I did a Friday and Saturday. It's a rack of lamb that I've sous vide for 48 hours as the main course. And then Sunday is a 1.5 pound prime New York that was sous vide for about 50 hours. And then there's 3 or 4 courses that go on each dish as well. So yeah, it's great. It's like $115, but it includes the bottle of wine and feeds 2 people. So it's you know, it's a splurge, but it's still cheap for what you're getting, I think.
Sounds delicious.
Cool. All right, we have one more wine, I think. So Niner.
Yeah, we have our Niner Cab. So for those of you who are familiar with Niner, they have 240 acres planted. That includes both Paso Robles and San Luis Obispo. I'm sure a lot of you have seen their famous pictures of their Heart Hill. It has that lovely stretch of greenery that's in the shape of a heart. They were actually the very first SIP certified winery. So although our SIP certified vineyard program has been around since 2008, the winery program is newer. And they were the first ones to join that certification. And additionally, their building is LEED certified. So they also won this last year USA Today's 10 Best Winery Restaurants. So another incredible place to go get some food. And one of the cool things about Niner is how involved they are with training their staff. They have this very cool education program going where they take their tasting room, marketing, kind of hospitality team, and they're all making a wine from block to bottle. And they're doing every single piece of farming, every single piece in the winery itself. And it's been such a cool project for them, both on like the good and the bad side. I think it was last year during harvest, we had that crazy like heat spike, and they said it was all just such a surprise where it was like, oh wow, like you really have to harvest like now. You know, they didn't have time to actually do it just, you know, for the sake of getting things done. But they did produce their first bottle of Pinot, and they said that they were pleasantly surprised. It came out much better than any of them anticipated. So cool organization there.
Yeah. All right. So the one dish I would challenge everybody to do over the next month, and whoever's listening, is duck confit, because it's one of those dishes you don't usually do. It takes a long time, but we're home, so why not try it? And duck legs are fairly inexpensive, and they go really good with champagne, by the way. But I really like it with the Cabernet as well. Cabernet, we all know this is grown all over the world. It's great, but why? To me, it goes back to the fact that it's one of the only grapes, mainstream grapes, that has both really high natural acid and really high natural tannins. So I think when you taste this, you'll see if you swirl it around and let it sit for a little while, it's the first wine all day because it's Cabernet that leaves a little dryness on the roof of your mouth and also tingles your tongue a little bit, right? So it acid and tannins, which of course helps the wine age as well. And it's really fun to pair with. The duck confit, super classic, just old school. I take about 5-6 days to make it, and then I seared it just before service. So this was actually served. I made a batch of duck confit, I think 2 weeks ago for the to-go service, which was fun. But again, duck confit, super rich, really fatty. The richness and fattiness sort of cuts through the acid and tannins like we kept mentioning. The duck is sort of gamey. This niner is really fruit forward, so I like the sort of savory, gamey notes with the fruit forward Cabernet. It's my idea behind it as well. And also, I did an extra pairing too. I thought it's kind of fun for those who haven't had it. These are the oranges. There they are. What I've done with those is that they're cooked for 16 days, and they're the same as the cherries, but they're on and off the heat. 8 hours on the heat, 8 hours off the heat for about 16, 17 days. And when you get it, you can actually use a spoon and cut right through the rind. You eat the whole orange, okay? And again, there's no added sugar. It's just them cooking themselves down. So it's kind of fun. Jamie, did you have those at the restaurant, the oranges, or no? Sorry.
The oranges you're talking about?
Yeah. It was the orange version of cherries. Yeah, they're super cool. I put them to go as well. But the point is that anything orange and chocolate with the fruit forward Cabernet is a pretty fun pairing as well. So that's why I did that. So.
Can I give a little shout out to Somm's Kitchen?
Sure.
It was such a fun night. I got to come for a story, so I was by myself, and I've gotten used to doing that, but that environment there with the horseshoe, you can't sit there by yourself and not befriend someone. It's just impossible to, if you're trying to hide, don't go there for dinner. But it's so wonderful, and you do such a good job. And yeah, it's a really skeleton staff already with you doing most of the work. But I really encourage anybody who's never been. It's a really wonderful experience, and you certainly know your stuff.
Yeah, Adam's been there a couple times too. I think I don't know if he's texting in the box, but he was fun to have in there too. Wait, did you come the night, Jamie? Did you come the night that Dow was like handing out bottles of wine? Was it?
He sure was. He really was. He was handing them. I wound up with like half a case in my trunk.
Yeah. It doesn't happen every night.
I was very lucky.
Cool.
Yeah, Adam just tapped into our little chat box over here, and he said the Somm Kitchen experience is one of a kind, and he said incredible in all caps. So cool. Sounds like it's something that we all definitely need to do again in person.
Ask him for his Venmo handle. Give him a payment for a shout out.
I don't know if I'm unmuted or not, but it was.
Oh, you are. You're on.
Oh, cool. We're lucky to have, like, obviously, other kinds of places that, like there's Six, there's things like that. But I've found what's so unique about what Ian does there. I don't know. I just thought, like, I remember the first time being, and I don't like to draw such a juxtaposition because I love what Ricky's doing at Six, but I remember the first time being in his garage, it was like unreal. It was so cool. And then I felt like the transition to Paso, like for me, the way you're dialing it in was more, I think it was more cohesive of an experience than the new transition into that. I don't know what exactly you're doing. Maybe it's just because it's you. The horseshoe is definitely, like Jamie says, it forces everyone to kind of commiserate. The way you never even knew, like if one of my tastes went down to nothing, you were already there. And it's crazy because you're the only one doing it. So maybe it's just attention to detail. I don't know, because we're really lucky to have the chefs and everything we got here, but the situation that you dialed in with Somm Kitchen is really, really one of a kind, and I'm such a fan of it.
Cool, thank you. Like I said, I'll Venmo you some money, don't worry.
There you go.
Well, and Ian, with that, while we have you on the line still for just a couple more minutes as we wrap this up, where can people actually find out more about you? Because you are doing some of these to-go meals, because we have some other audience members that haven't been yet.
Yeah, I mean, I would say to definitely hop on the website, sommskitchen.com, and then you can sort of read about the restaurant itself, what happens there. And if you hit reservations, it'll sort of give you a list of all the upcoming to-goes. and you sort of buy a ticket, and it'll explain everything on the website under reservation. So yeah.
Very cool. Anything else from our group of panelists? We got Beth. Let me pop you on. There you go.
Would it be possible to just get a price range for my readers and stuff like that? Because I think they're definitely going to be interested.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
Usually, well, on a regular night, right? The 6 o'clock seating, it's 14 seats. Like I said, usually about 10 courses to share, at least 12 wines every night. That's $100 a person.
Wow.
And then in the wines we pour, I make it a point as you go through that, I think that because there's 14 people there, I like talking about the quality of wines a lot and why certain wines get a certain price point. So once a night I'll open up something crazy, $150 retail bottle of wine, and we taste it blind, and then we go through it, or it'll be Premier Cru versus Grand Cru Burgundy, or whatever it is. There's all these terms we always hear that are sort of scary and subjective on the wine trail that you can come there and actually taste them side by side, and it's kind of a cool way to do it because you don't have to invest in the whole cost of the bottle of the wine. And of course I get to try it too, so that's the real benefit. But
Well, it's a good education for a lot of people too. Like,
I think so. I think, again, it's like, I can talk about wine, forever. I can read about wine forever, but to actually be there and taste them and realize, what, there's 12 other people around you that we just don't know everything. The only way we're going to learn is if we taste it, right? And I'm always learning every night, and I'm super, super thankful for it. And, the issue is that we're so small that when we were opened, it was always booked, 2 to 3 months ahead of time. You just can't get in because it's so small. Yeah, hopefully we get back open soon enough.
Do we get a pass now or what? Do we get like a gold ticket? Do we get a gold ticket?
Yeah. I'm going to start auctioning off seats. So, no, the idea is you come into someone's home. We don't ever post a menu. I'm so thankful that someone comes and gives me, a night of their vacation, a special occasion, whatever it is. The fact that they went and signed up that far ahead of time, they're coming and not really knowing the menu. They're going to sit next to other people. They sort of gave me so much already, so I better open good wine for them, and I better be nice to them, and the food better be good. That's sort of how I view every service, and I'm always so thankful that people come in and fill that restaurant up because it's my dream. It's great. It's great. So.
And Ian, sometimes do you get the winemakers?
Yeah. So at
Christmas, they're passing out bottles.
Sometimes in December, I do these things. It's called the 12 Winemakers of Christmas. So I team up with 12 days in December, and so last Christmas we did Torin, I did a Saxon dinner, I did a Booker dinner, so on and so forth. And sometimes the winemakers are there talking about it, and they have a big TV behind the bar. So I Skype in European winemakers to do the dinners where they can talk about the wine as we're drinking it, and sort of, yeah. So we're always doing crazy events there, and it's kind of fun. So.
Awesome.
And then all the events are always online under reservations. None right now because we're not open, but I think if you went to reservations, you see I still listed the chef's counter and the private table. So it describes the regular services I do when we're open, and then it'll list all the to-go dinners we're doing as well. So,
okay.
Yeah, I only do 12 a night, 12 to-go dinners a night.
Oh, okay. And you're selling out?
Kind of. Like I said, it's hard because we're small towns, and you can't really rely on everybody, and then we're all scared. So do you really want to go out and buy a $115 dinner, even though you probably could? You don't really know what's going to happen, and especially in Paso Robles because there's lots of retirees, there's lots of business owners who are scared, and then there's no real, it's just it's a different demographic. They love wine and love food, so they're supporting me for sure, and I'm super thankful for it. But we really need to get open back up so we can get some tourists coming back to town. So I think Santa Barbara's probably the same way. I don't know. But I said early on to some of the people, I'm sort of banking on the fact that, okay, when the state opens back up, I'm hoping that, not everybody's going to go to Italy and France this summer, but maybe they'll make a trip to Santa Barbara or Paso Robles that they weren't considering, and we'll get that kind of traction. New customers that haven't been to our regions yet. So.
Yeah, that's right.
Cool.
Yeah, there's a lot to see.
Thank you so much for organizing this. I know it's a lot of work and kind of cool.
Yes, thank you. It was great. Adam said that he savored the river bench, which I think is important. I did too, right here in my closet, so it's a mess now. I want to thank everyone for joining us. And Ian, that was fabulous. It was so much fun. I loved all of your pairing ideas. It was just really fun to put this together all along the way. Everyone definitely look up Somm's Kitchen, learn more about him. You can go to sipcertified.org. You can find all of the sustainably made wine brands that are on there that are participating in our program. And thank you to all of our wonderful panelists for joining today.